Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inside Cafe. I'm your host, 𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃, and gosh, today, what a treat. I have Robin Charbit all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, from the US of A. And he's one of my favorite authors, co-author of the Invisible Power book, one of my favorite inside out business books ever. And we're going to dive into that a little bit. So before we get into it, let me introduce Robin. So Robin's been the CEO of Insight Principles for over 20 plus years. You've been like I said, you've been the co-author of Invisible Power along with Ken Matting and Sandra Crott. You've been helping individuals and teams and organizations understand and access and utilize the immense power of our human mind. And even before that, you were a director and managing partner of Arthur D. Little Inc. for 10 plus years, where you've managed chemical consulting group for North America. And before that, you were a business leader at Exxon Chemicals. So you've had an incredibly long career in business. And I'm so excited to dive into that. And before that, just to introduce how I came across your work is, so in learning about the three principles and insight understanding, your book was the book that helped me bridge that distance between the spiritual and business. And it was so, when I read your book, it was so common sense, the stories that were shared in principles that you were pointing to. And it became my mission to bring spiritual back into business because I saw the immense potential that was being unlocked in myself and my clients when I started to point to this. So welcome to the show.
Lovely to be here, 𝗲𝗃𝗃. Thanks so much for having me on.
Excellent. And so today I would love to talk to you specifically about two things, productivity and balance, because as an executive myself, I've noticed my unrelenting and never ending to-do list, and it just never ends. And sometimes when I get caught up, it does look real enough to me that I want to stress and worry about it and do something about it. And I find that it takes me away from actually doing the work that needs to get done. And at the same time, when I do get caught up, I do feel myself getting unbalanced. And I feel that, gosh, I wonder if all the other executives out there are quietly dealing with the same thing. So I'd love to start off by asking you, I'm going to say this sentence and I'd love you to speak to it. As an executive, like,
Sure.
gosh, I have so much to do. There's not enough time. My team's overburdened. If only I could be more productive.
Well, that's very, very common. And if you objectively looked at what's going on, it would be true. Now, there is a solution, and there's a built-in solution. And I'll describe how it appears, and then if you want, I can then explain what it is.
Please.
But if, and this is going to resonate for some people and not for others, but if during your schooling, you changed school, you were like the senior kid in junior school, and then you went to high school, and all of a sudden in high school, you were the junior kid, you were the youngest. In the US, there's 4 years of high school. So most people say the first time they arrived in high school, it was disorienting, because they were big kids and, you got to figure stuff out on your own. And it's confusing and hard and overwhelming. Well, if you ask most people, what was it like in their final year of high school? Most people say, well, we were untouchable, we ruled the world, no one could tell us what to do. We got it, we had it. It was all handled. Well, what happened between the first year of high school and the last? Did you go on a how to handle life program? No, if you look, what happened is you kept having these insights about how to better organize and figure stuff out. And then it doesn't stop there. Most people leave high school like kings of the planet. They go to university and it's a shock, because at university, no one tells you, reminds you about your assignment. You've got to figure out how to study on your own. And so a lot of people find the first few months, if not the first year of university difficult. But the same thing, by the end of university, most people are like, I got this, it was easy, well, how did that transition happen? And then you leave university and go to work, and it's, again, confronting, because you've got to turn up on time, you've got to dress properly. Well, maybe less so these days. Can't use bad language, and you got to listen to people more important than you who don't want you to talk to them, maybe. So most people find their first job weird, because the way they're thinking about life came from the way they were at university, and now it's different. Well, again, if you go to most people at work, they've figured out how to be at work in an okay way. So if you look at all the changes, right from when you were born and you didn't know this was your hand, all the way through getting your first job, your mind seems to know how to adapt. And the way it adapts is by changing your thinking so that you look at things in different ways. Now, guess what? Working in a company is exactly the same thing. You know, you figure out how to be an employee, then they give you people to manage, and you can barely manage yourself, and now you have to manage other people. Well, you need to make a shift. Now, you can go on a lot of training programs and you get a lot of advice, but the most powerful way to shift is to let that happen on the inside. And that it actually does. And so what I tell people is this is a never-ending process, because life is going to continue sending you more than you can do. I mean, your inbox will never be empty. There will never be hours in the day that cannot be potentially filled. And if you don't know how to have that shifting of your mindset as you progress in a career, you stress out. Because you get into what I call harder, faster mode. You know, it's like pressing on the accelerator and there's no more gears left in the transmission, and the engine's redlining and it doesn't look like anything's possible. How do you find that next gear? How do you find that next gear? Well, the good news is, Nikon, and for everybody listening, is built into you is the capacity to find that next gear. You just have to let it. You just have to know how to orient yourself to that. I'll give you a very simple example. I'm working with a senior executive, and he gets promoted to COO. So he's now the COO of the company. And 6 months into his job, he calls me up and says, "Robin, I need some help." I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "Look, my days are like back to back to back to back. And at 6 o'clock in the evening, I finally get to do the stuff I wanted to do today." And he said, "It's not sustainable. You know, I'm not getting my job done. How can you help me out?" Now, he'd been through one of our programs. I said, "Do you remember what we talked about, having insights?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "That's what you need. You need an insight to help you shift the way you look at things." So it's always easier to have an insight in a conversation. So we kicked it around, and I just very casually said to him, "Well, what's the biggest time consumer in your month?" He says, "Well, I got 25 direct reports and I meet with each of them 1 hour a month." So that's like 25 hours.
Yeah.
That's half a week gone. I said, "Okay." I said, "Why do you do that?" He says, "Well, they're my people. I need to, you know, be in touch with them, look after them." I said, "Okay." And I said, "Are they all junior? They all just started yesterday? Or are they any of them seasoned? Have they been here 300 years? I mean, what's the sort of profile?" He said, "Well, no, a lot of them are very senior. I mean, I'm the COO of this, you know, $20 billion company. So, you know, these are pretty seasoned people." I said, "Okay, well, if they're seasoned, do they all need to meet with you 1 hour a month?" He goes, "Well, actually, no. I mean, I got about 8 of them who they're potential replacements for me. I mean, these guys have got it all together. They don't need to meet with me regularly." He said, "Great, we've saved 8 hours. Thanks." I said, No, let's go a bit further. I said, "What about, you know, you've got 25 people, eight are good. What about the remaining group?" He says, "Well, you know, it's a mixture of people." I said, "Well, do they all need to be met with?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, when do you see these people normally during the week?" He said, "I see them all the time. They're my people. I'm in meetings all the time." I said, "Oh, could you judge in a meeting whether one of your people needs to have a one-on-one with you because they're flapping around or they've got a problem?" He said, "Yeah, of course I could." I said, "Okay, so if you made a calculus, you know, if you have 25, you take 8 people off, you know, that leaves you sort of 17 people. Of the 17 left, how many of them really need to meet with you once a month?" He says, "Well, maybe half." He says, of the 17, there's probably 8 or 9. They're new in the job. They're just learning how to operate at that level. I need to meet with them." I said, "Okay, that's 8 in the bag. You have to meet with them. What about the other 7? He says, "No, probably once or twice a month. You know, every one or 2 months, maybe." So I said, "Okay, so those 7, you're only going to meet them half. basically every 2 months. So that's half of the 7, that's 3.5. So that's 8 plus 3.5. So he's now down to 11.5 hours. So in a 10-minute conversation, he figured out how to free up 12 hours. So the point is, he did it in a conversation, but the point is, if you know how to look for an insight, Nikon, whenever things are jammed up, you can see a different way to look at it and let go. And see intelligently how to restructure things in a way that gives you time. So the only thing that has people not do that is they think the overwhelm and the stress is coming from the job. And therefore it's like, well, the day I retire, I won't have this, but while I have 2,000 people or 10,000 people working for me, I'm going to have to suffer this. And I'm saying, no, if you can rejig how things look through an insight, it will change.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think I got coached along the way too, because I was thinking that like, oh man, all this work, but then it just feels lighter now. And I think it occurs to me to ask you is, because you're talking about just letting it go and letting insight occur. I'd love you to speak more to that as an executive or leader. Where can we look for insight? It's because I think what you said is also very important, that our natural knee-jerk reaction to perceived stress and pressure is to grind. Like, I need to work harder. I need more productivity tools. I need, and what you're pointing to is that's actually the wrong direction to look in. Yeah. I guess, what's the nature of the stillness that creates insight? That's the question that occurs to me.
Well, I guess the way to answer your questions is insight is an innate capacity. It's built into all of us. You have it, you were born with it, and you'll have it till the day you die. You can't be broken, destroyed, but you can orient yourself towards it or not. And most people don't orient themselves towards it. So how many people create time to stop and look for insight? Now, I always give the analogy of looking for insights like catching a bus. Well, what are the basic requirements for catching a bus?
You gotta wait for the bus.
Well, no, even more simple. You got to know a bus exists.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You got to show up.
If you don't know a bus exists, you won't look for one. Now, once you know a bus exists, or once you know insight is a capacity, how'd you catch a bus?
Show up at the bus stop, right?
Exactly. If you sit in your living room and say, the bus hasn't showed up, well, guess what? It doesn't stop in your living room. So you got to go to the bus stop. Now, going to the bus stop, the metaphor is you got to orient yourself to look for an insight. Now, if you're running 24/7 and your mind is jammed and every night you just drop into bed and you wake up exhausted, you're not going to be looking for an insight. Now, do you know where people get the most insights in life? Where physically?
At the bus stop?
No. Close. The third place is in the car.
Okay.
The first place is in the shower.
Oh, wow.
And the second place is walking the dog.
Excellent.
And by the way, walking the dog is an oxymoron. You're not walking the dog. Guess who's walking who?
The dog's walking you.
Yeah.
He's helping you to get insights.
So what happens when you're in the shower? Unless you're a plumbing expert, and look, it's the 𝗷𝘀𝗽𝗋 2003. Oh yeah, they launched that one at the Madrid conference. Most people in the shower, what are they thinking about? Nothing. They're just washing their body. They're not thinking about that because they know how to do that. They've been doing it all their life. So they just sit there and there's warm water and they're relaxed and their mind wanders. Their mind just drifts.
Right.
When you're walking the dog or the dog is walking you and it's stopping here, having a smell, stopping here, having a smell, and you're just waiting. What's happening in your mind? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Now you can be, designing your presentation for tomorrow in your head, or you can just have nothing on your mind. Well, the mind, and likewise in the car, a lot of people get good ideas in the car, usually when they're being driven and they're just looking at the scenery going by and they're not analyzing the trees, they're not counting the buildings, they're just essentially daydreaming. Well, the mind has this capacity that when you allow it to relax, it gives you new thinking. Now, it looks like it's circumstantial. I have to be in the shower, I have to be walking the dog, I have to be in the car, but you can do that at any point. At any point, you can stop and look inside and to see what your mind can tell you. If you're grinding away, Nikon, you won't do that. Right. So it's linked to what the first thing we talked about. If my day is sort of flat out and I don't get a minute to go to the bathroom, have lunch, or do anything, well, good luck having an insight. So to have time to stop and reflect, and it doesn't take time. I mean, you don't have to go and light a candle and dim the lights and put on the right mood music. I mean, literally, you can just stop, look inside for a moment. Well, if your day's a rush, you're not going to do that. So if you can figure out how to get more space into your day, you're going to figure out how to have more insight.
You know, I love that. And I can speak to that. I have a direct experience of that, especially energy-wise. I remember when I started a new job as a first time as a senior executive, I think the first 2 weeks I was exhausted just energetically. And I knew enough that it wasn't the job, but it was that there was so much overwhelm in my head that physically it was just drained. And then I spoke to my coach, who's a 3 principles-based coach. And the next week I just had all my energy back. It was like that because I had dropped out of all that thinking. And it feels like a miracle, but I know it's incredibly ordinary. And I think that's what you're speaking to, is how ordinary it is for us, and how in terms of this ability that we all have and our natural capacity for insight.
And we're oblivious to it.
Yes.
And I don't mean oblivious, we don't know it happens. We're oblivious to where to look. And I'll give you a very simple example. When people get an insight, they had a problem, they've been struggling with it, and out of nowhere, walking the dog, supermarket, whatever, the idea comes to them. Some people go, look at me, how brilliant I am. I figured that out.
I'm so smart. Yeah.
And I go, no, you were in the vegetable aisle picking tomatoes, and out of nowhere, the thought came to you. You could not take credit for that.
Right.
Now, but some people, their ego sort of, oh yeah, look at me, I'm smart. Look what I figured out. They didn't figure it out. The second category, which is much more common, is people go, oh, that's great. Okay, I now see what to do. And they rush ahead with the insight. Very few people fit into the third category, which is to stop and go, wow, look at that. I was lost. And, out of somewhere, my mind brought me this new thought. If you can spend more time in that mode, you'll favor the likelihood of catching the bus.
I love that. Quotable.
Because to complete the metaphor of the bus, if you know what a bus is and you know what the bus stop is and you go to the bus stop, does it guarantee that the bus shows up when you arrive at the bus stop?
No.
Right. But if you wait, it shows up. So if you go to the bus stop, there's no bus here. Well, that doesn't work, and you leave.
Right.
No, you have to wait for the bus stop. And as you know, buses come and there's gaps, and then more come. And then, if you're there at the wrong time of day, when I'm really, really tired at the end of the week, trying to solve a big problem is probably not going to happen. So I've become much more attentive to helping my mind have the space it needs to generate the insights I need. And when it doesn't, I'm just very gentle with my mind and I leave it alone and let it rest. So as you said in that new job, you figured out how to drain the swamp a bit.
Right.
Well, that's what we teach people in the business world. We teach people, if they learn how the system works, they can operate with a clearer mind. And if you have a clearer mind, you'll have more insights. And insights are the gold to solve any problem that you have. I mean, that's why we're called insight principles.
The picture comes to mind of trying to do business and organize people and achieve KPIs and OKRs without insight. It'd be like running with your hands tied behind your back and, rocks in your backpack, and you're just making it harder for yourself. And it really does feel like that now that I think about it. And it's just being caught up in overthinking or being just caught up in your thinking. And so I'd like to shift the question to time now and ask the question, why does our relationship to time matter? Because often I feel with productivity, even for me, it's like I could get everything done if I had 48 hours in the day, right? But in what you're saying, there's something about a different relationship to time that I would love for you to speak to.
Well, this is all going to the sort of the inside out nature of life.
Mm.
Life looks like it's coming at us from the outside, but it's not. Life, you're experiencing life through these functions in your mind that create your reality. So in the same way that you go to a movie and you're in outer space being chased by aliens, or you're falling in love with somebody gorgeous on the screen, that's not, the screen isn't doing that to you. Your mind is doing that to you.
Mm.
Well, so the thing we want people to see is that time is also an internally generated phenomenon. So when you were a kid, how long did a day last?
Gosh, I can't even remember. It feels it was either really long or it was really fast, because it's so excited. I'm really in the moment,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were days where you were in class and it was like, it's never going to end, or you had to visit a distant relative or something, and your parents were thrilled to visit the relative, and you didn't, there was no one to play with, and so it was just an ever so long day.
Yeah.
And then today at work, you get up, you go to work, and next thing you know, it's 6 o'clock. Well, have they redefined how long a day is?
Mm.
It used to be 24 hours, now it's only 12. No, it's still 24 hours. It's still 60 minutes to the hour and still 60 seconds. So what's changing?
My thinking about time, right?
Well, it's your capacity to perceive. It's not a conscious thing. There's a very, very famous American baseball player. His name was Babe Ruth. This is, decades ago. And Babe Ruth used to say, on a good day, the baseball looks like a slow-moving grapefruit. So when he's up there to bat, the ball would be this big object coming at him really slowly. And he says, on a bad day, it would be like an aspirin fired out of a gun.
Wow.
Now, what's changing? Are they changing the size of the baseball based on the game? No. What he was essentially pointing to is the days where his mind was open and balanced and settled, he was grounded. He had all the time in the world. On the days where his mind was busy, things were just coming. So I would suggest that the speed of time is a function of the speed of your thinking. So if your day is going too fast and you look like you're inhaling life quickly, I would suggest that your mind is probably working too hard. And if your mind slowed down, time would slow down. So
that. Yeah.
If you teach people how the mind works, they start to experience that. And so the more you see the inside out nature of life, the more you have space, and then the more you have the ability to think deeply about things, and the more you have the ability to, what we say, go slow to go fast. And an example of going slow to go fast is a team gets together with a problem, and before they've had any chance to talk about it, they're in action plans, they're doing stuff. Well, are they doing the right things? Are they clear? So for us, when a team learns this, they get very quiet. They reflect and look for insights. And very often they come up with ideas such as, the charter of this project is wrong. Or you know what, that project team is doing something similar. Maybe we should combine. Or you know what, there's actually only one problem to solve, not the 3 we were given. They get wise about what to do. And then they go and do the work. How many projects have happened in companies where 6 months down the road, we realized we're not heading in the right direction, or we didn't have the right team, or the scope was wrong? So, it's less haste, more speed, or we say go slow to go fast. Well, if your mind is in a rush and time is running out quicker than you can manage it, slowing down to figure out how to do something properly is going to look like a bad idea, because perceptually it'll be no time to breathe. So it all goes back to the same thing. If you can learn how to ground yourself and have your mind be quiet, you will have all the time you need for everything.
I love that. I love that. I mean, and I've experienced that too. And I think for me, as an executive in my job, there's so many hidden gems in what you just talked about. And it's like how I realized how the insight I just had was when people panic, they they move faster, but then the ability to slow down makes you the most valuable resource because you can see the bigger picture and like, well, actually the problems are right over there. If we just fix that, this will take care of itself. And because the fires that everybody's trying to put out, they start to look a little shimmery. Like they look a little like, wait, I don't think they're really fires. Yeah.
Well, if everybody's had that experience, or most people have had that experience, Nikon, of something difficult or terrible going on. Some people panic and run around like headless chickens. Other people get really quiet and they go, no, we do this. And even though the situation is very complex, they seem to have an intelligent way to get out of it. So we've all had this experience, just most people don't understand the underlying science. And so it's a random thing. It's, I got lucky that day. No, you didn't get lucky. That's the way we're designed if the system is working well.
I was working with an executive a few years ago, and she would call herself a chronic overthinker. And she shared this story of how she had an incident where one of her direct reports had a seizure in the lift and like fell down in the lift lobby and kind of had a cut on his head and there was blood. And she said that everything got so quiet and she just knew exactly what to do because she was an emergency trained to do that person. She, you know, put his head, gently turned him over and took care of him. But the way she described it, she said, it just went quiet like that, like everything just stopped.
Yeah.
And we really looked at that and we saw that. I told her, you don't have to wait for somebody to get hurt for your head to get quiet like that. It's always available.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a lovely thing when it happens, but it's a capacity we have. So why not have it more of the time? And then the flip side, Nikon, is some people, you know, something goes wrong and they panic and they're useless.
Right. Lose it.
Funny thing that years ago, my in-laws were visiting us, and this is a long time ago, before cars had central locking. And my father-in-law is getting out the car and his wife closes the car door on his hand.
Yeah.
And of course it doesn't close because his hand's there, but it closes enough so the latch catches. But, you know, as they were getting out the car, they'd pushed the lock down. And so we couldn't open the door from the outside. So my mother-in-law does this to her husband. Guess what she does? She runs away.
Runs away.
Yeah, she panicked and she runs away. And no, someone needs to go to the other side of the car and try and open the door. And, you know, she just panicked. And he's stuck there. Now, you know, he didn't break any fingers, but, you know, it was uncomfortable. And, and the person who was going to let him out was running away.
It happens.
So in life, you know, stuff's going to happen. Do you want the capacity to be settled, or do you want the capacity to panic? Both are available to you, and both are internally generated.
What a powerful sentence, which leads me to my next question, actually, because it's occurring to me in this conversation is that, especially with productivity, as having a sense of balance or a larger capacity for balance is a huge competitive advantage. And I'd love for you to speak to that, to where does one look to find this balance? It's something we have to do to create balance, or is it getting insight about balance that creates more balance?
Well, some people are naturally balanced, and I would say they are they're unconsciously competent. You met people in your life, you know, nothing fusses them, nothing bothers them, and you'd ask them why, and they go, well, you know, I don't need to get bothered. Now, they don't know why, just that's how they look at life. And then you have other people who are unconsciously incompetent. So they panic and they got no idea why they panic. What we're talking about is making people conscious about what's going on. And the way you do that is you educate people on essentially the functioning of the human mind. In the same way that they don't let you drive a car before they've told you how it worked. Well, we were all given a human mind and no one told us how it operated. So if you very simply explain to people how the human mind works, what we've found, and we've been doing this for 20 years, is they start to see why they're doing what they're doing. And they start to have optionality. They start to have the ability to go, oh, I'm not going to do that. And then the other thing they learn when we teach them about the functionality of the mind is that a grounded, settled, balanced mind is actually the way you are, is actually the way the system is designed, unless you compromise it. In the same way that the immune system the natural state of the immune system is health. And it's beautifully designed. I mean, it's a magnificently elegant system, but you can compromise your immune system. Particularly with what's been going on in the last 2 years. You don't wash, you hang around people you shouldn't hang around, you get stressed, you don't eat the right food, you don't sleep enough, and guess what's going to happen to your immune system? It's going to get compromised. Well, we all know this, so we mostly don't compromise our immune systems. Well, psychologically, we don't know how our mind works, so we compromise it all the time. So the way to get people to what you describe, being more grounded, being more balanced, is to show them that built into them are all of these things, and that the more they understand their mind, they will let it exhibit those naturally. It's not a thing to do. It's not a technique. It's, if your mind isn't disturbed, it's in a high performance mode. Just look at very small children. If you look at a baby, Nikon, 12 months old, and it's awake and it's not tired, and it's not hungry because it's been fed, and it's not in pain, the kid will be alert, present, calm, peaceful, curious, learning, having insights. Now, how come a 12-month-old baby is doing that? Did anybody tell them to do that? No. If nothing's disturbing the system, that's what shows up. And we just haven't had this explained to us. So we innocently disturb the system and compromise it. It's a bit like you buy a car and you think that the parking brake in the middle is what you put your hat on. So you get in the car, you pull it up, put your hat on it, and then the car doesn't drive very well. Well, I guess next time I'll buy a different make, except the next car you buy, you do the same thing. Until one day you sit in the car with me and I say, Nikon, what are you doing? Well, I don't want my hat to get damaged. Yeah, but why are you putting it on the parking brake? The what? It's the parking brake. It's a parking brake? Oh. I thought it was just a little lever that you could pull up, and when you didn't have a hat, you could click it and it would go down. I said, well, the days when you don't have a hat, how does the car drive? Oh, it drives great. Well, this is a brake designed to stop the car from moving when you're stationary. Oh, really? Yeah, so if you try and drive with it on, it's not going to work. Look, try driving with it on. Oh, yeah, it's a bad noise. It's not accelerating well. Okay, stop the car. Now release it. Put the hat thing down. See how the car is working well. I think, oh my God, this is like the car on a good day. And it's that. And I said, yeah, it's like a brake. It clamps the wheels or it releases the wheels. Well, the next time you get in the car and it doesn't drive well, guess what you'll do? You'll look down and you'll see that the brake is on.
Sold. What I wouldn't pay to have more good days.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the point. That's why people love to learn this, because it's not that every day is going to be fine, because you live in a human system. In the same way you get tired, you get hungry, you have muscle pain, your mind's not always going to be working at its best. But if you understand how it's designed, Nikon, you can get out of the way more often, and your statistics will improve. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's built, high performance is built into the human system. It's the misunderstanding of how the system works that causes us to compromise it all the time.
Powerful. I'm so happy we're recording this. Is that just to reflect high performance is built in. We're just unknowingly messing with the system that's keeping us from that innate ability and capacity for productivity and greatness and good things. So, which leads me to my next question of what I think our society celebrates, but then just now I just realized that actually one of the huge things that gets in the way is ambition. I think especially for executives and leaders or entrepreneurs, that it's almost the more ambitious we are, the more kind of like, oh wow, like look at him go, he's very ambitious, but then there's so much premises wrapped up in ambition that I can see now that kind of keeps us from our balance and our grounding. Because for me, ambition is like, okay, if I can just, it's never, right now is never enough. I always need to get more. I need to push. I need to get more done. I'd love for you to speak to what ambition looks like to you.
Well, ambition is a strong desire to accomplish something. Now, I don't think it's good or bad. It depends what the underlying feeling and intention is. So you've got people who go out and they play a game and they play full out. And then when they win or lose, they're just grateful they played the game. And they're not upset for the next 3 days because they lost. Because what they did is they didn't tie the accomplishment of their objective to their well-being. When you attach your well-being to your ambition, that's when you have a problem. So ambition is not good or bad. It's the underlying thinking behind that. If you play full out, but you're relaxed and grounded and grateful and your mind is clear, you can play really well. And then what happens, and you're just grateful. If you don't win, ... well, then all of a sudden you're a prisoner to your ambition. And I know a lot of people who, and this is a universal phenomenon, when I get that car, when I get that job, when I get that spouse, when the kids are in the right school,
Guilty.
then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not true. Whereas really trying to grow the company, and because it's a good thing to do, but your well-being isn't connected to that. That's where you want to be. And then some people aren't ambitious, and that's fine too. So ambition is not good or bad. It's the underlying view or the association that you make to the ambition, which is either good or bad.
I heard that. I can really relate. I think when in my executive role, when I was first given this big KPI by the group CEO or managing director, and my first thought was, okay, I need to achieve that thing as soon as possible so I can get back to feeling okay. And then I'll be safe, that I won't get fired. And I did that for about a couple of weeks. And then with working with a coach, it made less and less sense for me to put off my okayness, because I think what came out of my mouth was, it's going to be what it's going to be. And we're probably going to get there when we're going to get there. And then I had this interesting experience where the other me was like, you can't say that. That's not how this works. You gotta go for it, and then you're gonna be okay. But I was like, no, but it doesn't make any sense anymore. Like if we're okay now, we'll probably do better, And it was such a fascinating internal conversation to have and see that differently.
Well, and to make it fair, we live in a world that sends us all these messages that are not useful. I work with a lot of people who originated in India, and they've told me that in India, if your child grows up to be an engineer, a doctor or an accountant, well then you did okay as a parent. If they don't, well then you failed them and they failed you, and not only did they fail you, they failed all of the ancestors.
Wow, that's a lot of people to disappoint.
Exactly. So I was working with this lovely woman. She was 43 years old. She's working in high tech on the West Coast. And she remembers when she was 12, she came home with her report card. And she was 10th out of 45 kids in the class. And her mother wept.
Wow.
How can you do this to us? Our name, you're shaming our name. What would my parents think? What would my grandparents think? You cannot do this to us. Now, if you're 12 and your mother has a meltdown because you were 10th out of 45, that kid made up, I better work harder. And she said, for the rest of my life, through school, university, my PhD, I was never out of the top 3. Because I didn't want to shame my parents. Well, that sort of culture or that programming looks real to people. For her, it was real. Now, to her mother, it was real. Her mother didn't fake cry. She was. Now, what happened to her is at age 43, she was burnt out.
Imagine.
And she felt terrible because she was failing, and I'm failing my mother. Now she's not failing anybody. Her mother is the one having thoughts about what the kids should be or shouldn't be. So once you start to see the inside out nature of life, Nikon, you can see that we can get caught up on these, in English we say fool's errands.
Fool's errands.
A journey that you don't need to be on. Now, I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying don't have goals. But when your well-being is attached to them, that's when you have a problem. Now, yes, it can motivate people. I know many people who achieve things because they don't want to fail, but it's not a happy existence. And we work with a lot of very, very senior executives who think that's the only way to be in life. And we show them that if you let the innate intelligence run the show, the deep wisdom running through the system, if you let the mind operate at its best, you can actually go even further. I was working with a lovely guy. I've been working with him since 1998. I knew him from my previous consulting days. And when I met him, he was a young strategy guy, doing great, really lovely guy, very smart. And then we stayed in touch, and then I started this business. And then at some point he calls me up and says, look, I'm the head of a $1 billion business unit, and I'm not getting it done. I'm not meeting the goals. I'm working every hour that God sends me, and I'm burning out, and I can't make it. So he came to us, and we did a 4-day retreat and taught him how his mind worked. He relaxed. He saw he needed a whole bunch of insights how to manage his life. And within 6 months, he was like knocking it out the park, the business unit through the roof. So guess what? He gets promoted. And then they give him a bigger job with like 5 business units working for him. And he remembers what he's learned. And so soon he's cruising along running 5 business units. And then there's a merger with a company, and then they promote him to the executive suite. And again, he remembers what he learned, and he's cruising. His capacity to do work is magnificent compared to when I first met him, and he was like struggling. And then eventually the merging of the company, he becomes the CEO of a $60 billion company. The guy who couldn't run a $1 billion business unit would never have been able to run a $60 billion company. Hard work and pushing and ambition wasn't going to get him there. He was burning out.
Right.
Well, he learned how his mind worked, and he was able to let go of the parking brake.
Yeah.
And was able to do magnificent things that were, great for the planet, because it's a really good company he works for. And he had a much different journey than he was having when he first learned this understanding. So we work with a lot of people who are burning out, and we help them find how to move out of first or second gear. Because if you've ever driven a car and you leave it in first gear all the time, you'll know that your ability to get speed and your ability to have the engine last is low.
I'm so grateful we had this conversation in the most selfish way. I have a lot more hope for myself in my work. I'm like, I might do better than I think I could do, because having this conversation and even looking in this direction. And thank you so much for sharing that story. In fact, that was the meeting today with my senior executives, where I spent all this time thinking about these strategies and work and how we've been moving forward. And I get to this meeting, and the CEO literally gives me the strategy to take the whole thing forward, like on a plate. And it's one of those moments I'm like, okay, well, obviously that's it. What, thank you. And it was one of those moments like, oh yeah, this is not all on me. And it was and I was great. I think I was present enough to see what was happening, and I gracefully accepted, oh wow, thank you. And I got it. And so last question, I want to respect your time. If you could give a gift to everybody who is listening, it could be your own insight, it could be a knowing or a quote. If you could give one gift to everybody listening, what would that gift be?
Well, the thing I'd really want people to know, Nikon, is they're fine. No one's broken, no one's damaged. We all have peculiar habits, but they're just habits. They're not who we are. And the same deep intelligence that had us figure out that this was our hand, had us learn how to walk, had us learn how to speak. I mean, no one taught us those things. This deep intelligence is in everybody. It's in everything. And if you look towards it, you will see it, and it will help you out, because it's always been helping you out. You'll just, take the parking brake off. So I just want everybody to know that they're fine. They're really well designed. And probably the only thing that's not working in their life is that they're overthinking things. And if they could just relax psychologically, they'd be fine.
Take a moment, let that in. Wonderful. So I want to thank you so much for your time. I will put your links in the description. If you haven't read this book yet, please go buy this book, read this book. They also have a really powerful and wonderful training program available as well. And they can find more about that on the website. And I'll put that in the link as well. And this has been one of my favorite conversations. It feels like I read this book again just now in this conversation, and I saw it fresh with new eyes. There's a joke like, where's the advanced course? And it's the same material, just with different eyes. And I felt like that's what happened for me today. It's same material, different eyes. I'm like, oh yeah, the bus and everything. So thank you so much, Robin. I so appreciate you and your work along with your colleagues and all the things you're doing for the world.
Well, thank you, Nikon. It's always a joy to speak to someone about this. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop recording. All right.